Hello, Margaret. Are you hearing me all right there?
I sure am, Corey. Nice to be here.
Great. Oh, I really appreciate it. And the timing is good. I mean, we booked you before this came about with Danielle Smith and the Alberta thing, but it actually brought it into the news. And it's an opportune time to really clarify a bit of just what is the WEF and what is their agenda. As I said, it's not a hidden sort of thing. And
No, not at all. And the article you're referencing is a review that I have written for a C2C journal on the subject of about a book, a review of a book called Against the Great Reset. What is the Great Reset? The Great Reset is an idea espoused by the World Economic Forum. What is the World Economic Forum? It is an annual gathering of the world's elite, industrialists, politicians, even royalty shows up, certainly media, politicians of all stripes show up for a gabfest, to exchange ideas, to do lots of networking. It's existed since 1971. Started out just as a conference led by a gentleman by the name of Klaus Schwab, a business professor, and who lives in Geneva, and who has since built this annual gathering into a major international institution. They now have headquarters in Geneva. They are more than a gabfest. They are now a full-blown think tank with ideas, with prescriptions, and with promotional ability for very clear ideas they have about how the global economy should run.
Great. Well, I appreciate you clearing that. I misinterpreted how that book came about, but yeah, I did read the essay, and just that reminder to people. Yes, it's at the C2C Journal, 18 essays in Against the Great Reset.
And the book does exist. I mean, the book is far more comprehensive than anything I've written. I've just glanced across some of the key zingers and ideas in it.
Yeah, and so I mean, when it's gone beyond think tank and they've gotten a bit activist, it's a bit of what I said in my opening monologue, and you sort of have a line on that in the article in the C2C, you know, or as part of the essays, when just talking is no longer enough. Like, their ambitions, they don't just want to talk about it anymore. They want this stuff to get going.
That's right, absolutely, and that's why they're actually in the process now of setting up contracts. I wasn't aware of the one that they had contracted with Alberta, but certainly they have done a contract with the federal Liberals with a view to getting some kind of a digital ID system in place. And of course, the digital ID is one of the fourth industrial revolution's new ideas, new innovations that will bring us all. Well, who knows what the agenda here is? But it's on the one hand, you think, yes, digital ID sounds great. It will solve all kinds of problems in terms of communication, pulling together different files and different bits of stuff that we all have to carry around with us all the time. But on the other hand, the downside, what's the disturbing side? Is this not possibly the beginning of the surveillance state? Is this not this sorry lesson? We had a taste of this, of course, when the supporters of the truckers had their bank accounts foreclosed. So, there are always two sides to all of these great innovations, all these great ideas. And it's up, the question is, how do you sort through them? Do you sign on with the great thinkers and experts and ideas people at the World Economic Forum? Or maybe we let our legislators deal with this kind of thing. And one of the conclusions by one of the essayists in the book is that they clearly don't have any confidence in our individual governments. Somehow or other, they've got to come up with the ideas, and somehow or other, we're going to sign on with them. So this is one of the aspects, the arrogance and some of the disrespect that you see coming out of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, well, the digital ID is another one of those things. It's an ambition right in the wide open that could, it makes sense to some of us. I open my wallet, I've got my social insurance card, I've got my healthcare piece of paper one in Alberta that's falling apart, I have my driver's license. Boy, it'd be convenient to pack it all on one card. And it would certainly be convenient to me, but it'd also be convenient to somebody who wants to track and control everything I do, whether it's accessing healthcare, driving, entering a business, or purchasing something. And I don't want somebody else in control of all that.
That's right. And your health records and everything else. And all of a sudden you're an open book to somebody who's running the system like this. At least at the moment it's spread out. You'd be hard to track down if somebody wanted to. So no, this is fairly typical though of how they've got, the ideas that are coming out. Let me just recapitulate some of those ideas for you. One is, the ideas come from three main publications from Klaus Schwab himself. Of course, he's the instigator, he's the ideas man, he is the chief organizer behind the World Economic Forum. He's been at it since 1971, which is when he published his first book, a very obscure book whose title I can't even remember, but its main idea must not be forgotten, which is stakeholder capitalism. He's been pushing stakeholder capitalism now since 1971. What's stakeholder capitalism? It's no longer should corporations be answerable merely to their shareholders, but to the whole of civil society. Another idea, another book, the Fourth Industrial Revolution came out in 2016. There he talks gives a big history of all the different revolutions that have taken place, what the internet brought, what the different transportation systems that have totally turned our worlds. I mean, these resets have come along on a regular basis, it has to be said. And he's certainly got that side of things right. Every time a major new transformative technology comes along, it changes everything. So the internal combustion engine is what I'm thinking of here. And of course, marry that to Texas oil gushers, and you've got a totally different continent, right? From highway systems and suburbs and three-car garages and bridges and what have you to accommodate what arose out of this technology. So yes, so the fourth industrial revolution, he's saying now what we're can look forward to is the fact that we have new technologies, physical, digital, and biological, which will impact all our disciplines and even challenge ideas about what it means to be human. Now think about that. Well, you marry biological and physical and digital.
Yeah, I mean, the things that, again, yesterday's conspiracies are becoming today's realities.
Absolutely. In fact, it's taking about 5 months these days.
Yeah. And you spoke of like the stakeholder governance. Well, what that is ESG, which has been, in my view, just, polluting corporate governance around the world, particularly in the West, where they've lost track of what your corporation was even set up for in the first place. You're not social justice warriors. You should be providing a product or service and trying to generate a profit for your shareholders, nothing else. I mean, while staying within the law, of course.
Yes, of course. And you leave it with your shareholders to have their own conscience about how things should work and how they should operate. And because they're the ones who are plugged in and they're the ones who have confidence in your company to begin with. And they're carrying the cost. And once you bring other people in, they come in with no risk. And yet they're given all these, given a megaphone with which to shout out their latest grievance. I beg your pardon? And the shareholder has to pay for this? I don't think so. Now, a conscientious shareholder will say, well, yes, I'm listening to this, so I will act, like our own governments do. I will act and see that something's done about this. But it's vastly different from giving power to outsiders, I think.
Yeah, well, and so we're seeing that influence coming in. I mean, one of the big areas that kind of exposed it in Canada was, Schwab bragged about influencing the Trudeau cabinet and Trudeau himself. And Justin Trudeau did let slip, in a sense. Again, he's not a deep thinker. He might just be parroting a line he read somewhere, but he spoke to a great reset. And actually, when we have a prime minister who, I guess you could say, could be as easily influenced as Prime Minister Trudeau, I guess I don't want people like Schwab whispering in his ear.
Well, indeed. But you know what? You don't even have to have Schwab whispering in his ear. Although in his case, it probably has taken place. Don't forget. We've got people like Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland who were actual graduates of their Young Leaders Forum. In fact, Klaus Schwab himself has boasted to the effect that half of Trudeau's cabinet has been a young World Economic Forum leader. So these are people who have not, okay, they're acting independently, they have ideas of their own, but they all have been exposed to and have been part of this great thing called the World Economic Forum. And so has Mark Carney, incidentally. Both Christopher Freeland and Mark Carney have been either are or have been members of the Board of Trustees. I'm not sure about Mark Carney. There's a little bit, it's not clear on the net exactly what his relationship is now with the World Economic Forum. So no, you don't even have to have anybody whispering in anybody's ears. You just have these people who have had the privilege to, hobnob with the world's elite and just think what kind of influence that by itself would have. Not only that, not only do they not have to whisper in ears, they have gone so far as to provide the language themselves. So where do terms like the Great Reset come from? Where do terms like Build Back Better come from? Where do terms, that this is such a great opportunity? How many times have we heard here in this country about what an opportunity the pandemic gave us so that we could reset and get on with, completely new, building back better. Those are phrases straight from the World Economic Forum. So they're providing the language. Sounds great. It sounds utopian. It sounds noble. It sounds, why would anybody complain? And of course they're counting on this. So, one of the big cautionary lessons I learned from this, or rather this book again confirmed for me, is how important it is that we monitor how language is used, because it can be manipulated. It can be deceptive. It can be turned for, and that's just, when it's well-intentioned. When it isn't well-intentioned, when you get name calling, when you get, which again has its own set of metrics, name calling for, which at a minimum is usually about people who can't make their case, but increasingly it is being used to shut down debate, and worse than that, to pathologize your political opponents. And what happens when you pathologize your political opponents is you no longer have to pay them any attention, give them any respect, even encourage other people not to pay them attention or give them any respect. So this is very, very disturbing, how language is being used. It's not just Orwellian. There's a whole set of dynamics which are going on here, which we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, and that language, it isn't as pretty sounding as they try to make it out to be. I mean, the bottom line of the reset, you call it an opportunity. I call it opportunism. That gives a motivation to actually make a crisis worse, because the theory behind it is that if we can drag the world down to a crisis level, it gives us the opportunity to tear down their systems and rebuild them. But there's going to be a whole lot of suffering in that transition to this socialist utopia, and that's a pretty horrible way to get to it.
That's right, exactly. And there's no question we are going through a major transition. But the point is, and some of the very good essays in the book talk about how you can't design these things. The problem with any kind of grand schemes is you're looking at grand catastrophes. That's always what's happened, in fact, with Marxist attempts at Marxist type style governments, whether Stalin or Mao or Hitler. They don't work. And it's not just that there aren't any useful ideas within them. It's just that once you start to impose huge grand plans, you're just begging for some little thing to be wrong, and then all of a sudden the whole thing is thrown off gear. So no, it's and the same thing is true with innovation. For all the stimulus that our bankers, central bankers, and our governments can supply in terms of monetary and fiscal stimulus, there is no substitute. They can't, they can take the horse to water, but they can't make them drink. They are not going to they cannot force somebody to invent the internal combustion engine or an electrical engine. They are not going to be able to force anything. These are all the purview of plain old human ingenuity. People who see a problem, and that one person who says, I've got an answer, I'm going to try it out, I'm going to patent it, and I'm going to do this. So the book is chock-a-block with, useful stuff like, hey, how did the big industrial revolution that really fashioned the world for the better part of 2 centuries out of England, how did that happen? Guess how? Liberating labor, patent laws, property rights. Once people had these things, they went out and they invented. They came up with the spinning wheel and looms, and back then it was all about the spinning jenny, and the textile industry drove the big transformation, big transition. But yeah, this is how it's done, and you don't do it with grand schemes. You do it by liberating people to do their best and to come up with their great ideas.
We're seeing, I won't go far down that rabbit hole, but Atlas Shrugged seems to be playing itself out in a lot of ways almost with what was a fictional concept of a world where lobbying is more effective than innovation. And, you want to get in with the government rather than serve the people. Yeah. But I mean, we're seeing something are we maybe hitting a tipping point? Like, have they maybe pushed it too far? We're starting to see that sort of discussion. We're seeing it from Pierre Poilievre, though he felt perhaps pressured into it.
Yes.
But I think Premier Smith is definitely genuine when she's saying, I have no use for these guys and I want them to have no part of what we are doing whatsoever. Maybe we're going to see more of that.
Yes, hopefully. But I think there's a fine line to navigate here. The vast majority of, for instance, Albertans, I would assume, are still ordinary Albertans, are ordinary Canadians, and all of us are not really up to speed on this stuff. And most of us are worried about climate change, and we are looking for solutions. And anybody who comes along with some utopian idea, some grand sounding idea, no matter how woolly it is ideologically, we're inclined to buy into it. So it is really important, I think, for people like Danielle and Pierre to walk the talk more than talk the talk. Get on with doing what needs to be done. But in the meantime, bear in mind you're still getting up to speed populations.
Yeah, well, as long as I guess we start the conversation, it's coming out. We're hearing more of this. I mean, I'm 51 years old. That organization was formed when I was born. And to be honest, I'd never even heard of them until perhaps 2 or 3 years ago. So it is starting to come out in the open.
This is the way it's done. And I mean, so long as we do it in a reasonable way and get education. I mean, the politics of explanation is never wasted. Explain. Get out there and say this is in a measured way, and in a way that people, and in plain language.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your coming on, and we'll keep talking about it. And we'll keep watching these.
Enjoy your columns. I like the plain language particularly.
Much appreciated. And you do have that book out, the Dogbone Portfolio. Before I let you go, to remind people, you are an author, and you've written other things besides the.
Right. Well, I can speak about this with some authority because I spent 5 years of my life studying the technological transition cycle, which is really what the Great Reset is all about. And what's interesting is that the World Economic Forum has it absolutely right. We are moving into a Great Reset. Where they have it dead wrong is all the things that are discussed in the book against the Great Reset. You cannot prescribe. You cannot go out there and make things happen. You cannot. You have to get the problems out there and then let human ingenuity at the local level find the answers. And furthermore, at the local level, you mitigate risk. Okay, at the local level, you might make a little mistake. Fine, you're not ruining the world. You try these ideas on a global scale, you're looking for a global catastrophe if you don't get it right. And the chances that you won't get it right are pretty profound.
Great. Well, where can people find more information about you before I let you go?
I do have my book has a website. You look at it there. It's the dogboneportfolio.com. I also have my own website. I used to be a columnist, so some of my old columns are still up on the web, margretkopala.com.
Great. Well, I really
and C2C. I do have several articles up on C2C. I think this is my third or fourth that I've done generally on the subject of the vaccine mandates and now on the Great Reset.
Yeah, and it's c2cjournal.ca, and that's a C with the number 2, cjournal.ca. Well, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate frank discussion and people digging into this, and I think if we keep talking about it enough, we can shut this thing down yet. It's not a done deal.
Well done. Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, Corey.
I'm Matt Buscombe at Marketplace Commodities, and here's today's market report. Cash barley remains at $4.55. Feed wheat is steady at $4.65, and corn is unchanged at $4.76 per ton. In the milling wheat markets, December Minneapolis futures are lower a quarter cent at $9.58 1/4, with local hard red spring bid for November movement at $12 per bushel. In the oilseeds, nearby canola futures slipped $8.20 at $8.68.10 per ton, with delivered values for November movement at $19.25 per bushel. In the pulse markets, nearby red lentil prices are steady at 33.5 cents per pound, and yellow peas are trading at $13 per bushel. And in the cattle markets, December live cattle are lower 10 cents at $153.48 per hundredweight. For more information on pricing or FOB farm options, give me a call here at Marketplace 403-394-1711. Accurate real-time marketing information and pricing options.
Alberta Prosperity Project is dedicated to protecting Alberta's world-class energy sector and has invited Alex Epstein, American author of the best-selling new book, Fossil Future, to speak on the importance of fossil fuels and the vital role they play in our economy. Join us on Friday, October 28th at the Westin Calgary Airport for Beef and Beer with Alex Epstein. You will not want to miss this. Buy your tickets at www.albertaprosperityevents.com today.
You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access.